matters to the folks I'm talking to. So I'd much rather take your questions and so I'll just start off though by telling you a little bit about myself. I grew up here in Appleton. I went through the public school system, Columbus Elementary to Roosevelt Middle School, and then North High School. And from there, I went to Lawrence University where I studied government. And after that, I took a job in administration at Lawrence, where I was secretary to the Board of Trustees and assistant to the president. And among many other things at the university, I was responsible for managing the relationship between the university and the city of Appleton. And that was really my first exposure to the work of municipal government and what municipal government does. And it got me really interested in it and excited about what cities do. And so I ran for mayor, and I was elected in April of 2020, and as Sergeant Cash said at the beginning, an inauspicious time to take office. It's been a very challenging year for all of us in our community, and so I'm just grateful for the team that we have here at the city. That I get to work with people who are passionate about what they do, and people ask me what's been surprising about joining the city, and I'd say one of the pleasant surprises has been that level of passion and care of our employees throughout the organization, and the understanding that everybody who works for the city is a part of serving the residents of the community, and that's been uplifting in a time that's been really challenging to lead. So I'm grateful for that. But tonight we're here to talk about neighborhoods, and this is something that I talked about in running for office, and it's something that I care deeply about, which is the strength and health of our neighborhoods in Appleton. And as you all know, our neighborhoods are distinct. They're different. Each neighborhood to the next. There are different issues that each neighborhood is facing and dealing with, and it means that as a community, we can't take a one-size-fits-all approach to the issues that we face as a community. And that's one of the reasons I think it's so important to have strongly organized neighborhoods. And it's one of the roles that the Neighborhood Watch plays in our community, which is helping connect neighbors with each other to talk about the unique issues that you're facing in your neighborhoods and to look out for each other. And I think one of the things that this last year has taught me in my own neighborhood, I live in the River Drive neighborhood, is just how important those neighborhood relationships are, and knowing neighbors and being connected with neighbors. It's so important. And it's not just about suspicious activity, right? It's about the good things that are happening in neighborhoods, and it's looking out for people. It's helping a neighbor who had back surgery with snow removal, or it's reuniting a neighbor with her dog who likes to get out overnight and run around the neighborhood, which are both real things that have happened in the last year in my own neighborhood, and opportunities I've had to connect with neighbors. So it's so important, and it's why I'm grateful to all of you for your care in your own neighborhoods and the passion that you have for our community as a whole. Because if you didn't care and you weren't invested in your neighborhoods, you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be having this conversation. So I'm just so grateful to all of you for taking the time and making this investment in your communities within our broader community. With that, like I said, I want to spend most of our time just on your questions and the things that you're interested in hearing about and talking about. So don't be shy, jump in. There's a hand raised button, but you can also just jump in. And if you need help getting unmuted, I think, wave your hands in the air. We'll try and get you unmuted. So any questions? And I was told you're not a shy group, so
thank you, Mayor, for those words.
Speak up. Yeah, Joan. And let's make sure we get you off mute. Oh, hold on.
Sarah, you got it or do you need me to?
There we go. Oh.
This is Joan. I'm wondering, how are things in our community concerning both people of color and our Asian community as well? We hear so much nationwide. I wondered how things are in our own community.
Mm-hmm. Well, I can certainly speak to these issues from an anecdotal level, you know, it has been for members of our own community of Asian descent. The pandemic has brought its own challenges in terms of facing racial discrimination around some of the rhetoric about the pandemic. And you know, we've not been unique in that as a community. And while the reports of hate crimes against members of our community of Asian descent has not changed dramatically over the last year, we know that the majority of those incidents, many of those incidents anyway, go unreported, the things that people experience in our community. So one of the things that that I've done is to reach out to members of our community and community organizations like the Hmong American Partnership, for example, to connect with them and make sure that they have the support that they need, and also to speak out and make clear that hate has no home in this community. And that's something that I believe firmly. And so it's been challenging for some members of our community of Asian descent, but we're also doing what we can to stand with them and let them know that that they're supported and that they're welcome here. And in terms of general issues around race in the community, you know, this last year has been very complicated on that front also, and in particular in that intersection with law enforcement. Again, we've been no stranger to that as a community in terms of the community conversations and the demonstrations that have happened in the city of Appleton. But I think we worked hard as a community to try and build connections and build relationships with organizers and with businesses downtown and throughout the community. And I really think that speaks to our broader philosophy when it comes to maintaining our community, which is about making connections and building relationships. And so whether you're talking about it from the police department's perspective, which our colleagues from the police department can talk about in terms of community policing, or we're talking about in general as a community, how we approach solving issues, you know, that's really the approach we've tried to take, is build relationships and to treat people with respect. And I think that has served us well. This is a continuing conversation for us as a community, and I suspect it always will be. But I think we will continue to approach that from a perspective of building relationships and connections, as opposed to, you know, fighting and alienating people or treating people with disrespect. That's not how we approach things here. So I hope that answers your questions, Joan.
Thank you.
Mayor, we have one in the chat from Laura McCarthy saying, will the fire hydrants be painted this year? They're in rough shape.
That's a great question. So, Laura, I know very little about fire hydrant painting, but what I do know is that the fire hydrants are actually painted different colors based on the level of service of those fire hydrants, so how much water pressure they put out, and that way it's sort of a quick reference for firefighters when they are responding to an incident. They know the capacity of those hydrants. I also know that there's a citywide program to paint fire hydrants sort of systematically to try and keep up with maintenance. But if you're noticing some particularly rough fire hydrants, whether that's in your neighborhood or somebody else's, you could send us a note. You can send a note to our Public Works Department or you can send one to the mayor's office and we'll get that forwarded to Public Works. And while we're on that subject, if you're trying to contact the mayor's office, you can use the form online, or you can send an email to mayor@appleton.org. And we'll help get those emails routed to the right departments. So yeah, if you've got rough fire hydrants, we'd like to know about it. It may be that they're coming up for painting, or on the other hand, maybe they need a touch up in the meantime. Okay, yeah. So please do let us know. Yeah, Laura, please let us know. I saw that silver tag fell off. Yeah, so just let us know if there's particular concerns. Send us a note and we'll get that sorted out. Oh, there's a hand raised.
I see a hand up.
Joanne.
Yes, we live in a new neighborhood, so they're all new houses. And so we were wondering, we have a covenant. So who follows, who's gonna, what's the word? Who's going to enforce the covenant?
Mm-hmm. That is an awesome question, and not one that I've gotten before. So what I'll do is I'll follow up with our community development department, because I'm not exactly sure how those covenants work. I believe those are typically sort of among the neighbors in the neighborhood, and the city's not necessarily involved in those covenants. But I want to make sure we get you the right answer. So I think Megan's got contact information for everybody on the call. We'll try and follow up with you directly, Joanne. And if you don't hear back from us, please just send a reminder to mayor@appleton.org, and we'll follow up. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
And then Mayor, just a comment, just an overall comment that we really appreciate the lights at the pedestrian crosswalks on College Avenue. Really helps us feel safe when crossing such a busy street. That's from Jim and Lisa Dreyer. And I would agree, they're a wonderful addition.
Yeah. So the flashing pedestrian lights are a program that has been really popular in the community. It's something that's sort of in demand in neighborhoods around town. It's something that comes up, it seems, every year at budget time. The alders making their cases for the next set of the flashing lights. But they really have been a good addition, especially on those busy streets where it can be tough to cross mid-block. So glad those are working for you. And that's something that I worked on at the university when I was a staffer at Lawrence. Was trying to improve the pedestrian safety on College Avenue. And that was another place where really got to know colleagues at the police department and also in the traffic division of Public Works, trying to figure out how to get those installed and what the right system was, push button, automatic, what's the overhead lighting. Yeah, so I'm glad to hear that those are serving you well.
All right, so that pretty much wraps up our time for Mayor.
Okay.
I really appreciate him joining. If there are some additional questions, though, feel free to drop those in the chat, and we can definitely get those over to him or to his email that he provided for you guys. Thank you, Mayor, so much for joining us. We hope to see you in person at maybe another meeting come maybe a year or so when we do this again. We'd love to have you back.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all again so much. I can't tell you how much I appreciate your investment in your neighborhoods, and really appreciate the work that you do in the Neighborhood Watch, and look forward to seeing you all in person soon. Take care, everybody.
Thank you. So we're going to shift gears, guys, to our presentation for the night here for you. Our hope is to kind of keep with the schedule here. We're going to do kind of a brief agenda, just so you have an idea of what we're talking about today, and then we're gonna kick it off here. Let me just make sure everything is, Sarah's everything looking good on your end?
Looks good on my end.
All right, is everybody, can I get a couple thumbs up? Make sure I've got the presentation up so everyone can see it well. Awesome, I love it. All right, so just a couple of things we're gonna kind of go through as fast as we can tonight. So with that, I'm going to kick it off to the next slide here. So one thing that we've kind of through our entire time here with Neighborhood Watch and with some of the groups, one thing that we've identified is the need to call the police. People, the constant question that comes up is, what is suspicious? When should I report it? And there's always a hesitancy about of what that looks like. So we thought, why not? Better time than now, with so many people at home and knowing your neighborhoods and knowing what your normal routines are in your neighborhoods, that we might as well touch on this a little bit. So we want to urge everybody to report things when you see something suspicious, and urge your neighbors as well. So what does that mean? And so, I guess the best way to describe that for us was that Neighborhood Watch, both members and just members within our community, you're the eyes and the ears for local law enforcement. And the more that you see and you can, give us the reports of things that you see that seem different in your neighborhood, the better we're going to be as a community. And I know we harp on this all the time, but oftentimes people say, well, I didn't want to bother you. And so we really just want to know when you see something, call us. We never mind trying to answer a phone call or send an officer out to check something out. And so I made a very short list. This is obviously not all encompassing of the things that would be report worthy that we want you to call 911 for, or at a minimum, the non-emergency number. So some of these things I know sound kind of crazy, but if you see someone that needs an emergency, is saying I need help, obviously call us. One thing that seems kind of like it would be a normal thing, if you hear alarms going off or windows being broken, call the police. Sometimes alarms are going off for hours before somebody calls. And so some of these things are very basic. If you see someone with a weapon, you see someone entering and leaving a business before or after hours that you've not seen before. Oftentimes, which we'll get to a little bit further into the presentation, but vehicles parked in an area at night for an extended period of time that haven't been there before. There's somebody in the vehicle. A lot of these things are the factual things that you would see, and those are the reasons why you're calling. Sometimes people will call and say, hey, we think something's weird in our neighborhood, but they can't figure out what it is that's weird. So these are some factual things to think about of what's making something suspicious and why, which kind of brings me to the next opportunity. It's so important and critical for officers to have the facts from the reporting party. And so telling the officer the facts allows them to better address the needs of our community. So one thing that we have taken on since the early 90s was to train each of our officers in fair and impartial policing. What that means is it's essentially an interactive discussion during this course that 115 of our officers have gone through that helps them identify what their biases are and maybe why do they have those biases, but then not only why do they have them and recognizing them, but then what to do about it. And so again, we've also been able to train over 492 hours of this training to local law enforcement, so that not only if you're in Appleton, but if you're in Kaukauna or you're in Fox Valley Metro, that you're receiving officers responding to something that you're a traffic stop that has received similar training to our officers here in Appleton. And it's something we're really passionate about, to have our officers train and recognize some of the things that we all inherently may do. So part of that training, we have our officers ask themselves questions as to maybe, what kind of biases do you have? It is a normal human function to have a bias. One video that we show our officers is the Susan Boyle video of, I don't know if anybody even remembers her anymore, but she was on America's Got Talent or something like that. I can't remember which show, where she walks on stage and she's very unassuming and people don't know what they think about her. And they're essentially thinking, what is this woman going to do? And then she starts to sing and people are shocked and in awe. And that's not what they were expected. And so one of those videos, we play that one in particular so that our officers kind of realize that there are things that you make judgments about somebody every single day in the course of your routine. but what do you do about that? And how do you make sure that you act in a way that is based on facts? So some of the things that we talk about are, what are those implicit biases that you have and how can they influence your actions? And how can you do something to make sure that you override that implicit bias that you may have based on where you grew up, what your life was like, and the life experiences that you've had? We all have lived experiences that obviously impact the way that we interact with one another, but in law enforcement, we have to make sure that we're acting based on actual facts and knowledge and evidence. So some of the questions we ask them that to ask themselves is, who do you judge? How do you prejudge them? What's determining those characteristics, and why would you attribute that to that person? And do we know when we're doing this? And so those are questions that we challenge each of our officers to ask themselves every time that they're responding to a call, so that they can not only look at a situation with the facts, but understand that they may have something that they've dealt with in the past that could impact the way that they're responding. So it's very important, and we wanted to share it with all of you as just a way of giving just a snapshot of some of the training that we provide to our officers, and that this is something that's important to the city of Appleton and the police department as a way for us to be able to better address the needs of our community. So we empower you as you speak to your neighbors, that we can all kind of identify things that may affect us in our daily lives and the decisions that we make, so that we can all just do a better job of keeping each other safe. So with that, my last slide is pretty much just all summing that up, is that really once we recognize those biases that we have, that we rely on the facts, that we provide those facts, and that we make sure that we're making critical judgment when it comes to that. So again, just the small piece of some of the training that we do with our officers, and all officers are now receiving that training when they are hired here, and so that we can make sure that everybody's getting those same messages. So with that, I'm going to kick it off to Sarah here, and she is going to tell you a little bit about National Night Out.
Thanks, Megan. And I just want to let everyone know that there will be the opportunity to ask a lot of questions at the end. So I know Megan covered a very important topic, and there might be questions, but do know that we reserved quite a bit of time at the end of this presentation to answer questions, some that we already had emailed in, or live questions here. So we will get to that as well. But as far as Neighborhood Watch goes, I know one thing that most people are probably a little excited about is to kind of get back to quote unquote new normal. And I know we're sick of hearing, the normal, but we're really hoping and moving forward with planning our National Night Out for 2021. It was sad for us to miss it in 2020, but we knew it was for the best. So mark your calendars. August 3rd, Tuesday, August 3rd will be our next National Night Out. And Megan, I can't get access to your screen, so I'm going to have you do the slide for me. Oh, there you go. She did it. All right. So we'll be forwarding out those request forms email in the next week or so here to reserve your spot. But some things to think about for your group is to plan ahead. Get your groups involved early. You really want to tailor it to your local group, so might as well get everyone's ideas ahead of time. We do need the form filled out to make sure we do get the correct number of barricades in place. And you may wonder why we need that so early, but Warning Lights has been a great business and partner with the Appleton Police Department that they end up donating a lot of the barricades for our use for that night. So we do need to know in advance where those local block parties are going to be. And if you also can choose to use your neighborhood park, make sure you contact Park and Rec if you're going to use a pavilion. If you're going to use the general green space in the park, you don't have to reserve it, but if you want access to the pavilion, you do have to do that with Park and Rec ahead of time. And we want you to know there is no pressure to have a block party. Some people, that's just not their thing to plan a party, or you might have a really small neighborhood watch group that it just won't pay, or you don't think you'll get participation. We want you to know that everyone is welcome at our larger community block party. And lastly, in years past, we've always had, officers and McGruff and staff from our fire department come out to visit. So make sure you mark that on the form if that's something you're interested in, because we'll try to continue with those, of course, as time allows. I know in 2019, we had over 30 block parties, so it did take a lot of time for everyone to make the rounds and everyone to get to McGruff. We did have 3 McGruffs operating at once, but just know we do try to get out to as many as we can in a timely manner. Lastly, then I want to talk a little bit about the resources we have available on our website as well. So I don't know who is familiar with our website or visits it, but the police section of our website is on the City of Appleton website. And I am going to share my screen and actually go to the City of Appleton website. And Megan, can you give me a thumbs up if you can see it? Okay, perfect. I know there's a lot of information on the Appleton website. It can be harder to navigate, but if you go to residents, Appleton Police Department is kind of smack dab in the middle of it there, and we have a lot of information right on our front landing page. We put our policy manual for the officers right there. One click of a button, our entire policy manual open. We also have the Inquire, Inform, Improve section, where Chief Thomas answers a lot of community questions that are emailed in directly to him, and they're all spelled out there. You can take a look at those. We also have access to register for overnight parking, the crime map, a records request to get a copy of a report. We have a link to the City of Appleton employment section. You can also get a crash report or even file a basic report. A report that wouldn't require an officer's response for a minor damage to property, say with no suspects, something like that could be filed right here, right online. And we have our social media. Say you're not on Facebook or Twitter. I know we put out a lot of information on our social media platforms. You don't have to be have a username or anything set up on Facebook or Twitter. You can view both of our feeds right here at the bottom of our landing page. I do want to touch though on some sections of the website that are more, I guess, geared towards you guys, our neighborhood watch captain. So under APD watch programs, we do have this link here gives you an overview of what Neighborhood Watch is. So if someone has a question or is new to the neighborhood, might have a question of what it is, you can direct them to that link. We also have our Neighborhood Watch handbook, which I believe at our last in-person meeting, we talked about that this was being created. We did print some copies. It's available here. You can print at home. Or I know I've had some groups recently reach out that they had some new neighbors they were inviting into their Neighborhood Watch group and asked me to print some. And I mailed those out after they were printed, and we don't mind doing that. But it's a great resource for captains or anyone in your Neighborhood Watch group. And the Know Your Neighbor form is actually a great form as well that we've handed out in the past, but it's always good with new neighbors coming and going. Print a new one, get the updated information. You know, when you're going around asking people if they're interested in having a block party this year, this would be a great time to distribute that form and get the new information. And then we also do have a link to our Neighborhood Watch group map where all of you are on here in one big map where we show throughout the city where we have different Neighborhood Watch groups. So you can kind of see we have a good section of the city covered with Neighborhood Watch groups. Obviously, we'd like to see a lot more filled in here. I think right now we had a few groups drop off that unfortunately the captains moved out of their neighborhoods and no one wanted to take over for them. So I think we're down to 80 groups right now that we have left as organized groups, I should say. So with that, that's all I have for right now. I'm willing to open it up to question and answers because we know you don't get us face to face very often, and we know we'd love obviously to be in person face to face, but feel free to start throwing out the questions there. If you can unmute yourself, go ahead. If not, we can try to unmute you, and I see some here in the conversation box already popping up.
And Sarah had a couple questions as well for me, so I can start by this Deborah Martin's question if Sarah wants to kind of fill in some of them as well.
Okay.
Sarah Megan, do you have a template or form that Neighborhood Watch Captain can use to drop in mailboxes to our neighbors to introduce what Neighborhood Watch is all about? And where can I insert my personal info and other neighborhood news? Also, will the APD print these newsletters out for us? We can absolutely work with you to get something like that if that's something helpful to be able to have a space for you to put your name and some of your contact information. We can definitely follow up with you on that, Deborah. And if anybody else would like something, we can make a note for that.
I think we did have a postcard we had created in the past that we maybe put in everyone's folders. I want to say at our 2019 meeting, maybe it was the year before. But we do have some postcards, but we can definitely get more of those printed and email it out to everyone to take a look, and anyone request copies to do that.
Absolutely.
Then yes, we did have some questions emailed in earlier, and the mayor touched on some of these, but I'll go ahead and read a few. There were a lot of fireworks going off random times last summer, not just 4th of July. Is there some way this is getting addressed for this coming summer?
So yes, we are constantly at battle with the fireworks that happen typically before 4th of July and onwards. It's a very difficult thing to address as a police department, but we are always looking for new ways to address that issue. One of the things that we, are urging as many people, and you'll probably see some social media stuff over the summer regarding it, is reporting it. And being able to get an officer out there in a timely manner is always the challenge, especially about, those busy times of the year. But continue to encourage your neighbors to call so that our officer can be out there and witness it happening and then be able to address it. Sometimes the time delay causes an issue with some of that process, and we're going to do as best as we can to tackle that problem again this year.
Okay. And then in the chat, I can take this one. Julie asked, I noticed you stopped sending crime reports out this last year. Is that because you posted on the City of Appleton website? Yes, Julie, that is correct. We, since Megan and I took the program over, we have not sent that out, only because we did not feel it was a beneficial list, because the drill down on the crime map really lets you look specifically at your neighborhood. We want you in, obviously, yes, if there is a major incident, you can follow us on social media or it's on the news, that is listed. But the damage of property, burglary, theft complaints in your specific neighborhood, we want citizens to have more of interactive approach themselves, looking at, drill down to your specific neighborhood. If you have a tip on there, you can, I think there is a link still to email it right in, or at least there is the incident number that you can refer to when you give us a call. And really, I guess it just seemed more convenient for users to look at it directly themselves. That would be something we would have to speak to our records manager, because we have switched CAD and reporting systems. I don't know what would be available for a list of an email source, if that's something you guys are interested in, getting a list of crimes in the city. I guess that'd be great to see, who else is interested. We'd have to look into that and what is available. Like I said, we've switched programs, so I don't know what would be available at this time. Does that answer your question? Send a thank you. So yes, hopefully. Okay. I have another question from our emails earlier, Megan, that I'll let you take.
Sure.
My next door neighbor continues to display a cloth Trump 2020 Keep America Great flag in his front yard, which is being held in place by metal stakes and zip ties. While I respect and defend his right to free speech, this ongoing gesture and subsequent conversations imply that he supports efforts to overthrow the results of a free and fair election which was held last year. Given these observations, how might we stay on the lookout for and gauge additional signs of threatening behavior in our neighborhood?
So I think that this would lend well to kind of the presentation that I gave, about what we ask our officers to do. And I think that what we would urge every Neighborhood Watch group to do is assess, what are you seeing? Are you seeing a sign and additional behavior? Or are you seeing behaviors and no sign? And a lot of that is the totality of the circumstances at the time. So, what other things are you seeing that are concerning? And, we're happy to have those discussions. I've had those discussions with the neighbors and Neighborhood Watch captains that have called us throughout this last year. We will address as much as we can when it comes to anything, related to a placement of something, if there's a violation or if something leads to an inspections issue, we'll address that. But when it comes to what is somebody doing and what is displayed, we have to protect everybody's First Amendment right. And this issue has come up several times this past year with a lot of the tensions that we've seen. And so we'll do our best to kind of address those issues as they come up one-on-one with the situations that we see. So, urge your neighbors, if you see something, you can definitely reach out to us and we'll try to address one at a time as best as we can. And I'll answer Mary Ann's question. What is the criteria for you to share with the captains about activities that have or are taking place? Do you reach out to specific captains that are near an area that suspicious activity occurred? So our goal is to always try to address an issue if we see it happening in a specific area that's a trend. I can tell you, for instance, an example of the catalytic converter thefts this last year. We were trying to identify if there was a specific area that they were occurring in. Unfortunately, they were occurring all over the city of Appleton, so that's where we had to, rather than take kind of a patchwork approach to multiple different neighborhoods, we decided to just send out the information to everybody because it's so relevant to you regardless of what neighborhood you live in. So those are things that we will try to address as much as we can if there's something specific to an area. But typically, the way that we look at it as far as our Neighborhood Watch approach is that if it's happening in your neighborhood, it could be happening somewhere else. And so it's still the awareness piece of letting everybody know that it's happening, I think is even more critical than just identifying one specific neighborhood.
And just to add to that a little bit too, just this morning I have a Neighborhood Watch captain reach out. She had some damage to her front door. And it was great that she contacted us right away and even sent us some pictures. I did encourage her to call, and we did have an officer go out and take a report as well, because something that may look minor or not that suspicious in one incident could look very suspicious in a series of incidents. So you do want to make sure that's reported. So at the police department here, they can tie all those together. And actually then I suggested to her, and something she didn't think of, was to send that out to her Neighborhood Watch group. Hey, this is what happened. This is roughly what time. And we do encourage that when you do, whether you are a victim of a crime or a neighbor was, be sure to share that with your group so that everyone's kind of on the lookout for something similar or may have seen something or possibly would have outdoor, so many people have security cameras around their home now that may have caught something at that time that was reported. Okay. And then a question from the email we got was, what has the Fox Cities experienced in the last year with regard to Asian hate crimes? And I know the mayor touched on that a bit. And then we just got one in the chat also. Have you seen an increase in hate crimes or calls regarding Asian Americans in our community?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think Mayor touched on it a little bit, that there's a lot that's going unreported within our community. We know that there are members of our community that have had issues happen, and we've addressed those that we're aware of. We've continued to encourage as many of our neighbors and community members, with the help of the Hmong American Partnership and some of our other partners that we work with, to provide an opportunity to be able to feel comfortable sharing some of the experiences that they've had, and how can we address that as a police department. So as far as have we seen an increase in reporting, I can speak anecdotally that we haven't seen a huge increase. That has been, a dramatic difference in years past, but we know that there's a lot of unreported incidents happening that has obviously been made a very difficult year for Asian American citizens here in Appleton. So as community members and as Neighborhood Watch captains, we urge you, I know we've had some really great captains this year that have done some amazing things, including their neighborhoods. And I would encourage you to reach out to your neighbors and tell them that you support them and you support their families and anything that you can do. I know we've had a couple Neighborhood Watch captains that have done that and have gotten a great response. So and they've shared those things with us and it's wonderful to see that. And if we told you everything great that all of you do, we'd be spending more than 2 hours here tonight, but it's been amazing to see some of the stories that some of you have shared with us over the last year of some of the successes you've had within your neighborhoods and the ways that you've connected with each other. And it's been such a tough year. So we really appreciate, keep sharing those with us. And I can move on to another question from, it looks like Marianne. Is an officer automatically sent when something is reported, or do you need to request one? So when it depends. If you call and are reporting something to our front desk or by 911, most likely that is going to be screened to determine who is going to respond to your call. So, there are dog bite calls and things that don't require an officer's response, which would be a community service officer that would respond. If it's determined that an officer is going to respond, then an officer will respond to that call. So I hope that answers your question, Marianne. An officer is going to be prompted if you do call something in and it's been determined that it's needed.
And I can speak to that a little bit because I did work at the front desk for several years. The staff up there also take the reports. If it is, say, minor damage, minor theft, and you have no suspects, that is something they may take a report from you over the phone. They may also direct you to the website to fill out a form to report it yourself, or they can offer the mail-in report. So they're not pushing you off. If they do that, those are just options that are available to anytime you do want to request an officer, you can. But just know that if it is minor damage, minor theft, in value, when I say minor, obviously it's major to you that that's happened, and there are no suspects, they may take that over the phone.
So Joanna Higgins provided something in the chat here. One of our neighbors had their outgoing flag up mail in their mailbox stolen. These were bills being paid with checks. The checks were reproduced with banking information. The person who stole the mail used the bank information to charge against the account at Walmart in La Crosse, Wisconsin. The individuals had to change all of their banking information. I informed our Neighborhood Watch group, advised not to put bill payment into the outgoing mailboxes. That is absolutely 100% what we would say to do. I will share a very embarrassing story very quickly. A few weeks ago, I did place something in my mailbox on a Saturday afternoon, put my flag up, assuming that everything was going to go wonderfully. And myself, along with the rest of our neighborhood, had our mail stolen. And that's with 2 marked police cars outside of our house, cameras on our house, doing all the things that we tell people to do. But I did not remember to not put my mailbox flag up, and I sure enough put something in there. Fortunately, because of some awesome neighbors and Neighborhood Watch group, I would say in our neighborhood, we were able to at least recover some of the stolen property. I was able to get a refund on the items that I lost out on. But again, without some of those helpful neighbors and some good things, I didn't listen to my own advice and have now will not do that again. So absolutely, as Joanna shared, If you have a bill, if you have something that's going out, this was just, was shipping something back. But if you do have something, if you have the time, bring it to the post office or a mailbox out in the community. Don't leave it in your mailbox.
Yeah, unfortunately, those are crimes of opportunity. You know, that's easy for someone to grab in the daylight or at night. But Megan knows better now. Okay, question that came in via email. What are the plans for farmers market, parades, music festival, Jones Park, city pools, any date changes, modifications, etc.? Well, I know ADI is moving forward with the farmers market. Parade, I believe we have our first, is it Flag Day parade that is returning? Yep. Jones Park, all the parks should be open. And Park and Rec is moving forward with a lot of their programming. City pools, I don't know if they made a decision on yet. So right now, we really don't know of any date changes or modifications. I think everyone at this point is just crossing their fingers that we can move forward. But like us with National Night Out, we are moving forward and planning because we know we can't plan it last minute. But just know that if it happens and we have to, we will cancel it last minute. And another question was, what is expected with regard to mask mandate ending in Wisconsin? That was supposed to be today, and obviously we know it ended sooner. Is Appleton to consider extension?
So I guess to speak to that, kind of our stance on everything is to kind of take our guidance from our local health department, like we've done since the beginning of the pandemic. And most of it has been to just provide education when given the opportunity of why the city is making the decisions they are and how can we best serve our community. So that's probably a better question for the health department. We're doing our best over here at police to address as many needs as we can. And Laura, will their Thursday night concerts continue in Houdini Plaza? Well, we sure hope they do. We haven't heard any definite plans on what their plan is to do. I could see them potentially, moving it to a larger space. I know that those were talks that they had last year with some of the traditional Houdini Plaza night concerts being moved elsewhere, but we have not heard as of yet.
Yeah, I know that is all part of ADI, Appleton Downtown Inc. They're very active on social media and have an office right inside the Red Lion, and very great group to work with that probably could answer that question better than us. But yes, like Megan said, we hope those things return. Any other questions? That's all the ones I had from email. Throw them in the chat or raise your hand if you have more.
Marianne, Megan, I spoke to you last week about something going on with a neighbor that reported a possible attic dweller, which is an ongoing investigation. Is that something that can be discussed? Well, it is an ongoing investigation, Marianne. So there is, obviously only so much that we can provide in a group setting like this. But I will applaud Marianne for reaching out to me. There was an incident that was happening in her neighborhood that we had responded out to originally. And she did call and reach out to me to say, hey, what's going on with this? What's happening? And we were able to make some better connections to get some additional resources out there. So this was one of those stories that was very helpful and very needed to have a neighborhood watch captain reach out and get involved. So that's pretty much the gist of what I can talk about with that incident. But it's a good example of Marianne reaching out to us as a captain and saying, hey, I'm wondering what can we do about an issue that's happening. So any other questions from anybody else?
And I know we did say we could go till 7:30 if needed, so we do have time. And I know our chief was lurking in the background. Chief, if you're still lurking in the background and you want anything to add, feel free. Maybe he's not on anymore.
Amy's got a question or a comment. I do miss the regular emails about ongoing investigations that are pertinent to our neighborhoods. I appreciate the social media. However, emails from Sarah and Megan are easily forwarded to my group. Yeah, we can work on, some of that as well. We can try to see if when there is trends, we can try to pinpoint some of those for you, the folks. We're always trying to look at what is relevant to everybody, and sometimes by the time we get the information out to you, it may have already passed in a neighborhood. So we'll try to figure out what is the best way to balance some of that for you. So it's relevant information for you as well. Thank you, Amy.
Anyone else? Anything goes here. This is the time you're going to get the quickest response probably from us. Although try to answer our emails the best we can as quickly as we can.
While we're waiting for any questions, I can share one additional example that came up from a neighborhood watch captain. This was actually quite a few months ago, but it was a situation that I think is very relevant to why it's so important that you guys are here. A neighborhood watch captain reached out to me and said that they had some concerning behaviors happening in their neighborhood. And I asked what were those concerning behaviors and what had happened. So they started to tell me that earlier, I think it was a few weeks prior, that a neighbor had noticed a car was parked on the street in their neighborhood and that it was full of people, and they thought it was kind of odd, but didn't really think much of it. Well, the car then at one point somebody got out of the vehicle and was staring at the house and continued to stare at their house, and this was getting into the evening from what I recall of the conversation. Ultimately, the neighbor decided to kind of stare back at the person as to what are they doing. And there was opened the door, so it kind of just stared at them. They stared back. There was some sort of exchange that happened, and they didn't know the person. Pretty soon, the neighbor goes back into the house, turns some lights on. This car pulled into the driveway for a period of time and sat there. Then at one point pulled down the block a little ways and then drove back past the house again very slowly. This had been multiple neighbors alerted by this interaction that was happening, and they went about the rest of their day. And nobody called the police and nobody said anything until it came up in conversation with our neighborhood watch captain. And so that was a situation where the fact that this person was getting out of the vehicle, having some exchange of words, they didn't know the person. There was multiple people in the car in the evening. The steps to do more than just driving past, more than just sitting there. It didn't appear that anybody from the vehicle came out of the vehicle to go to a house or came from the house to go to a vehicle. All of those items were very concerning to us, in the way that if you see something like that, encourage your neighbors to call us. We'd rather come out and find out that someone's just looking at, and this wasn't at Christmas time, so it wasn't Christmas lights, but that it's something simple to explain away what may have happened. So Joanna says, one of our neighborhood watch signs is now being blocked by an overgrown bush. Who do we contact for the bush to be trimmed for greater visual awareness of the neighborhood watch sign and our neighborhood watch boundaries? All right. Oh, sorry, I pronounced your name incorrect as well. Jonna, sorry. I have a friend that's Joanna, she's my favorite, she's my best friend, so I apologize for that. We will do our best to contact Department of Public Works for that neighborhood issue and get that resolved for the sign. All right, Joan, go ahead. Oh, we still.
Sorry, Joan, let me get you on mute.
I'm off. Okay. When you were talking about signs, I was wondering how we do not have a neighborhood watch sign yet in our neighborhood.
Okay. Let me see what number you are here.
And you're in a brand new neighborhood.
Oh,
correct?
yeah, you're the newest group.
Yeah, we're at the. We're by.
Yep, I see you here. I have it up on my spreadsheet. I did send it out recently, an update to our GIS department that'll handle the online map, and then our street department that will put up signs. And that might be a summer project they have doing, or will have planned for like the summer help that come in. So know that we do have a request in for some new signs. So there will, because there will also be some taken down, unfortunately, this summer. So we do have a list out to them.
And then Sarah, can you
Awesome,
unmute?
thank you.
Can you unmute Joan as well? It doesn't look like I have that ability for some
Yep,
reason.
she did.
All right.
She is now.
All right, thank you.
You told the story of the people in the vehicle and the concern. What about just vehicles parked in the street overnight? What are the regulations in the city? And what should we do if those regulations are not followed?
So it's 2 to 5 parking in the city of Appleton. So between the hours of 2 a.m. and 5 a.m., you need to ask for permission to have a vehicle on the street. Now, permission, you can be requested through the website, like Sarah showed. And there are some special permits that are given if there's construction or you're having something done that would also provide more of a long-term solution to that. If you do see that, that is a question we get quite frequently. Please report it. There is a reporting function as well within the parking program to report that a vehicle is on the street. Now, one thing that can become very frustrating, and not only as a neighbor, but as even just Sarah and I in law enforcement, is the fact that this is an enforcement that's done during officers' downtime. So this has to be between calls for service and things that they are, handling as far as police calls that come in. So between that 2 to 5 time, sometimes can be a time where they can address that concern. On average, we typically have in the evening between that hours of time, it's a smaller amount of officers working. So we do encourage them to try to get out there and make sure they're getting those issues addressed, especially if it's an ongoing issue. And the biggest thing that can drive that is if somebody is reporting that they're seeing an ongoing issue with a specific vehicle or a specific area of their neighborhood where they're seeing parking issues. But sometimes it is a very frustrating part of that piece of parking enforcement, and we hope to obviously have our community service officers help address that as well.
Whoever reports, is that name protected from the neighbors so they don't know who reports?
Yes, for anything that's essentially reported, your name can remain anonymous. So that's why we have it set up the way that we do, so that we can just address it and have it be handled, because we know that that's an issue that no neighbor wants their other neighbor to be upset with them about something that they're reporting. But it becomes an issue all the time. We hear it from people where a vehicle's blocking a driveway, or it's blocking an area, or the visibility of things, or they can't park where they want to in front of their home, or wherever that may be. So definitely continue to encourage people to report it, and we'll do our best to address it. If you've noticed an issue that's not being addressed, that's definitely a call you can make to Sarah and I and say, hey, we've reported this X amount of times, just wondering if you give us some insight on it.
Thank you.
John. Mm-hmm.
Okay, Jody had her hand up and I can't unmute her. So Jody, if you're able to unmute yourself, go ahead and ask your question if you still had it.
Right, I think I have. We're over in Maple Hills subdivision, which is it's probably been here about 23 years. And we also need the neighborhood watch signs. Should I tell you our perimeters? We're north of Edgewood and just west of Mead Street and Castleberry. So we're right near Thrivent. And then on Edgewood, I believe there's probably 3 entrances there. I'm sure you'll decide which entrances get the signs, but the one of the other ones is Castleberry and Mead Street.
Okay, and let me just see something once here.
It might have been that many years ago we had them.
Okay. One thing that is on that map, that is, I guess they don't have the signs on the public one. Okay, sorry, kind of talking to myself here. The map that's available for the neighborhood watch groups, you can see on there what your boundary is. And that looks incorrect at all, definitely call us and we'll get that changed with, like I said, our GIS city mapping system. But I will add yours to the list as well. And it's the street department that comes out and they determine how many signs and where they go. So we don't get a lot of choice on that. But what I do is I just send them the group and where it is, and then they'll come out. So I'll add that to the list as well.
Right, because when I looked at that map, I think, yeah, just north of us, the subdivision, that would be Crossing Meadows, and that, yeah, that is not us. So we're south of that. I don't think they have any up there yet either, but I am not sure.
Okay, and that's something definitely we can look into. I know they have the signs ready to go, so that's easy for them to add to their list of activities to do this summer.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
And Marianne, two things. We're seeing a number of strange things in our neighborhood. A group text was created to get the word out faster. People check text faster than email. Also, is there a way to network with other captains? Two great points, Marianne. I would encourage anybody and their neighbors to either do group text, a Facebook group, some, sort of other networking groups. Some people are doing WhatsApp groups. Find what's going to work best for your neighbors to connect with them. I know my neighborhood does very well on a Facebook group, but not everybody functions on social media. So find what works out best for you. We would love to find a way for those of you that are here tonight as captains and members of Neighborhood Watch to better connect with each other. And so if you guys have ideas about that, we've been tossing around some ideas ourselves. Of course, getting you involved together, if anybody would be open to it, we tossed around the idea of when it's safe to have, a coffee and invite you all to come in and just be able to talk and ask questions, and less formal of a meeting, so to speak, to be able to network with some of each other and figure out what other neighbors are doing, because there's some really good work happening out in neighborhoods and the neighborhood program. We'd love to see all of you come together.
And just to follow up on that too, I know when we put this map together, we had each of you say, do you mind to have your name and email address public, or would you like that private? So when you hover over each group, if the captain requested to be public, you can see the captain's name and their email address. So if it's, a neighboring neighborhood to yours, that's something you can reach out to them that way. And we have a spreadsheet of all the captains, and that's something we could do in the future, is do a survey. Would you mind your information being shared on the spreadsheet? Because we would be more than happy to share it if everyone wants it shared. And obviously, if that's something you do not want sent out to the group or your information on, we would take your information off. But that would be easy enough for us to do, to make a secondary spreadsheet with those that don't mind their information being shared. Whether it's just an email address, just a phone number, an address, however you'd like that, see that, that's something we'd definitely be open to discussion to in the future.
All right, and Deborah Martin, this time in 2019, the fire department gave us a presentation that gave us all food for thought regarding fire pit safety and permits. Can we get an update on this info to share with our neighbors? We can absolutely get some information out to you, and if we are able to, we will definitely try to get the fire department on board for a meeting upcoming, and try to get them a little bit more involved as well.
Yep, and I know in one of our past newsletters we had information on the fire pits, and that's something we could easily send over to one of the battalion chiefs over there. Check, make sure it's the same information, same accurate information, and even resend that out too.
All right. Any other questions for us? Well, it was awesome for all of you to join. We can stick around in case anybody has any questions, but other than that, that's all we have for our presentation for you tonight. We tried to keep it somewhat short to relevant information for you, and we hope to continue to connect with you when we can actually see you in person. Thank you all for coming.
Thanks, everyone.
Jonna, I got it right that time. We have 2 empty houses due to turn over. Is there anything we should do for neighborhood protection? I would encourage neighbors to continue to pay attention to those houses. That's another crime of opportunity for somebody to notice that the house is empty. One scam that we are seeing happen as well is that people will look for homes that are either for sale or for rent and try to use those in some level of scam. So either renting them out and promising people that, or a lot of different scams are out there regarding that. So I would say just be very aware of who is coming and going, and that if it is an empty home and you start to see lights on at night and you're aware that nobody's supposed to be there, then obviously call us as well. Okay, so one house was sold, but no activity at this point. It was sold, but no remodeling, etc. The other is not sold or for sale yet. So again, just be aware of if you do have a relationship with the homeowner who was in charge of it, or who maybe potentially is the real estate agent. Sometimes they're an excellent resource to be able to say, hey, what's going on over there. They may or may not be willing to provide information, but just continue to be a diligent neighbor if you see something that just does not look normal, or again, if you're seeing lights going on or off, or people, anything broken or damaged on outside of the home, would be definitely things to keep in mind. Thank you for all the questions, everyone.
Thanks.
All
I
right.
should have said before we cut out that we recorded it. We will send it out to, if there's something you missed, if people cut it in and out. So, all right.
And as always, reach out to us if you have any questions. All right. All right, I think that's it.